induced miscarriage, termination of a pregnancy, murder of a child. These are words used to describe abortion. This controversial topic is difficult to solve because of its political interest and because of its complexity. It's important to talk abortion because there is the life of a mother and of a child that is at stake. No matter what side you choose, it's important to understand that there's a basic human right that's being jeopardized by abortion laws and by illegal abortions. By gaining knowledge on this topic, we can further understand why there's a divide in our country based on this controversy, and we can understand the physical trauma, the psychological scars, difficult decisions, and even the social criticism that women face when they decide they want to abort a baby or keep a baby. An abortion can be defined as a deliberate termination of a pregnancy. The first abortion that was recorded in history was in the year 500, when a Chinese royal concubine decided to do the procedure. Later in the Greco-Roman era, people resorted to poisons, and in the 16th century, women would apply intense pressure on their abdomen and even resorted to battery to induce a miscarriage. In the 19th century, the British Parliament decided to put in the Offences Against the Person Act to prevent abortions from happening. And the American Medical Association decided to lobby against abortion in the United States. Due to these opposing sides, there is tension because of the ethical, moral, legal, and even religious aspects of this controversy. There are two prominent sides, the pro-life side and the pro-choice side. These opposing points or groups clash on questions such as, when does life begin, and also, does the woman have the right to choose whether to abort a baby or to keep a baby? Pro-life advocates believe that abortion is morally wrong and incorrect because the baby's life should have the same rights as the mother's life. Pro-life supporters also believe that life begins at conception, so as soon as a baby is conceived, it has the same right as the mother to live. Pro-choice supporters believe that the mother should have a choice because it is her body. Also, they believe that life begins at birth, so what happens before that should be the mother's right to decide. Both sides have strong opposing arguments, which makes it difficult to find a middle ground. Pro-life advocates believe that life begins at conception, and they use the fact that a sperm and an egg cell are both alive, and when they come together, they make a new life. Therefore, that life deserves the same basic human right as the mother. Because pro-life supporters are also religious, they believe that God is against abortion. They use the commandments and the Bible to prove this. The commandment, thou shalt not kill, for example, does not support abortion. The Bible verse, Job 31:15, which reads, Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one form us both within our mothers? This shows that there's an equal life obligation of the mother and the child. So both deserve the basic human right to live. Another common pro-life argument is that adoption is an option. So instead of aborting a child, you give it up for adoption to a family that is willing to adopt. They support this argument by saying that there are millions of couples and families that cannot conceive. Therefore, they resort to adoption. And if abortion continues, those families will not have an option to adopt. Moving on to pro-choice arguments, the woman has the right to choose what happens to her body. They say that this is protected under the 14th Amendment due to the privacy and the bodily autonomy right. So they get to choose whatever happens to them. A famous court case known as Roe versus Wade is good proof of this. This case in 1973 struck down Texas because of its ruling against a mother's rights. Another argument for pro-choice is that the value of the life of the mother has moral obligation over the child. Because the life begins after birth, this means that the embryo, which is part of the mother, should not have the same obligation of life as the mother. So the mother gets to choose what happens until the baby is born. Circumstances like rape and also birth defects are another argument. They say that people or women who were raped have more psychological effects and are reminded of the trauma when they have a baby. So the option to abort is a relief of this trauma and psychological damage that can be present when having a baby. In Austin, Texas, a 12-year-old girl was raped by her father, and her mother said that because of an abortion, she was able to continue living a more normal life. Also in Texas, not having the option to abort a baby with birth defects has created fear within mothers because they don't want their child to suffer. As a religious, pro-life supporter, I believe that abortions are morally and ethically incorrect. The pro-life argument that life begins at conception, I believe, is a strong argument because it is backed by science. A baby starts to form a heartbeat and facial features such as eyes in just 4 weeks. After month 2, we can see limbs and we can see brain activity. Because there is a human development of life in such a short amount of time, those babies do deserve to have the same basic human rights as their mothers. Looking at the argument of religion, I do believe that it's not as strong as an argument because it is not backed by science, but it's more of a personal belief and opinion. But because I believe in God, I believe that abortion is still wrong regardless. I believe that the founders of America also believed that abortion is wrong because they were religious. There's proof in this when we see the nations under God and the Pledge of Allegiance. The pro-life argument that adoption is an option, I believe, is also another strong argument. This is because the U.S. Department of Health Services says that there's 125,000 children adopted every single year in the United States. This means that there are families out there that are looking to adopt children. And with an increase of abortions, those children will be limited and those families will not have access to the ability to have a happy and normal family if they cannot conceive a child on their own. Adoption is also a great option for people who have same-sex marriages. And with abortion, they would not be able to enjoy the same family setup as people who can conceive a child. The pro-choice argument that the women should choose what happens to her body, I think is a strong argument because as a woman, I want to be able to plan when and with who I have a family with. But there is preventative actions that can help prevent unwanted pregnancy. There are contraceptives for women and for men, and they're over 99% effective. So to say that I want to keep this baby or I don't want to keep this baby should not be an option, because if you take preventative action, you shouldn't have to get to that point to decide if you are going to have an abortion or not. Next, when looking at the obligation of life for the mother over the embryo or the child, I believe that this argument is not very strong because under the 14th Amendment, it says that the basic human right to live is for anyone born and naturalized in the United States. So an unborn child should have the same right to live as her mother, or its mother. If this is the case also, then why do 38 states consider the murder of a pregnant woman a double homicide? This means that 38 states believe that an unborn child still has the basic human rights to live and should be protected under the 14th Amendment. Rape and birth defects are also a strong argument, but there are also some flaws. There's a study where 37 women who claimed to be raped decided to keep their babies. 28 of them who continued the study reported back, and 2/3 of them said that their pregnancy improved their mood and they were more content, they were less fearful, they were more happy with their life. And when they had their baby, they didn't consider it a reminder of the trauma. In fact, They actually saw it as a blessing. As for birth defects, there is equipment that can tell you if a baby can have birth defects or no birth defects. Although a doctor is not 100% sure if the baby will have birth defects, there's always a chance that the baby could just not have any birth defects at all, even if the doctor says that it does. At this point, if the child is going to result in suffering, I could consider abortion as a circumstantial option, but it should not be the first option. Overall, abortion is a highly debated topic in the United States and will continue to be controversial based on different beliefs. But I do stand with pro-life, and I believe that abortion should be the last resort or not legal at all. And I believe that people should be encouraged to view all of their options before they choose to abort a child.